On a Tuesday afternoon, my boss called me into her office and told me an unauthorized email had gone out from my account, promising one of our biggest clients a $40,000 discount nobody had approved. IT had already traced it back to my login. My badge had scanned into the building at the exact time it was sent. I had never sent that email. I didn't even know it existed until she pulled it up on her screen. She gave me until Friday's board meeting 72 hours to explain what happened, or she'd have no choice but to let me go. Mid-promotion cycle, with my reputation destroyed on the way out, I spent the first 6 of those hours in complete panic. I spent the next 66 of them building a case against the one person in that office who had every reason to want me gone, and just enough access to make it happen. My name is Alyssa. I'm 31, and for 4 years I've worked as a senior account strategist at a mid-sized marketing firm called Corbin Reeves, managing client relationships and campaign strategy for some of the agency's largest accounts. I started at Corbin Reeves the same month as another analyst named Nathan, hired within a week of each other into what was, at the time, a genuinely friendly rivalry, the kind where two people pushing each other to do better work makes both of them sharper rather than resentful. For the first 2 years, that's mostly what it was. We collaborated well, covered for each other during busy stretches, occasionally grabbed drinks after a hard week with the rest of the team. Somewhere around year 3, the dynamic between us shifted, though I didn't fully register how much until much later. A senior strategist role opened up above both our current positions, the kind of promotion that would put whoever earned it in charge of the agency's most valuable accounts and, practically speaking, on a clear track toward leadership within a few years. Nathan and I were, by every internal measure I had visibility into, the 2 strongest candidates. I didn't think of it as a competition. Not really, not for most of that year. I focused on doing strong work, building the client relationships I already managed into something even more solid, taking on additional responsibility wherever I could. If Nathan was thinking about it differently, I didn't see clear evidence of that at the time, just a version of him that seemed, gradually, a little more competitive in meetings, a little quicker to highlight his own contributions. Small shifts I mostly chalked up to normal ambition, in a workplace where ambition was, frankly, part of the job description for everyone at our level. About 5 months ago, I landed the agency's largest new client win in over 2 years, a national retail brand that had been courted by 3 competing agencies before choosing us. Largely, my boss told me directly, because of the strategy presentation I'd built and delivered personally. It was, by a significant margin, the best professional moment of my career at that point, and it made me, unofficially but unmistakably, the frontrunner for the senior strategist role everyone had been quietly watching for over a year. I want to be honest, I didn't fully register, at the time, how much that specific win might have changed something for Nathan. In hindsight, it's obvious. In the moment, wrapped up in genuine excitement about the client win itself, I mostly missed it. Small things started shifting after that. Nathan became slightly harder to read in team meetings, supportive on the surface, but with an edge underneath comments that I couldn't quite place at the time. He started positioning himself more visibly in front of our director, taking on visible tasks in ways that felt, retrospectively, less like genuine initiative and more like careful stagecraft. I noticed, without thinking much of it, that he'd started staying later than usual, sometimes still at his desk when I left for the evening. None of it registered as anything more than ordinary workplace competitiveness. I had no reason yet to think of Nathan as anything other than a colleague I respected, even if our dynamic had cooled slightly compared to our earlier years at the company. That changed entirely on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after the client win, when my director, Denise, called me into her office with an expression that told me immediately something serious was wrong. Denise didn't waste time on preamble. She turned her monitor toward me and pulled up an email sent, according to the header, from my own company account, to the lead contact at our newest and largest client. the retail brand I'd personally won 5 months earlier. The email offered the client a $40,000 discount on an upcoming campaign package, framed as a loyalty adjustment, complete with specific account details and a tone that read, uncomfortably, almost exactly like my own writing style. It had been sent 9 days earlier. The client, understandably pleased, had already begun restructuring their upcoming budget around the assumption that discount was real and approved. "I never sent this," I said, and I could hear my own voice come out thinner than I wanted it to. Disbelief and fear tangled together in a way that, I realized even as I said it, probably sounded exactly like what a person caught red-handed might say too. Denise didn't seem entirely unsympathetic, but she was also, understandably, dealing with a genuine financial and reputational problem that needed an explanation fast. "IT already confirmed it came from your login credentials, sent from a device on our internal network. Your badge access shows you were in the building at the time it went out, at your desk, based on the workstation ping." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I want to believe you, Alyssa, but I need something more than it wasn't me by Friday's board meeting, or this becomes something I genuinely can't protect you from, especially with the senior strategist decision happening the same week." I left her office in a kind of numb disbelief that took real effort to walk through calmly, aware of how many people in that open office might already be watching me, wondering, the way office instinct always seems to know when something serious has happened, even before anyone says a word about it directly. I spent that first evening at home in something close to genuine panic, running through every possible explanation. Had I actually sent something I didn't remember? Distracted during a hectic week? I pulled up my own sent folder repeatedly, finding nothing, no trace of the email Denise had shown me, which meant, at minimum, it had been sent, and then deleted from my sent items specifically, something I certainly hadn't done myself. By the second morning, panic had started to curdle into something more useful, focused, specific fear, the kind that makes you start actually thinking, rather than simply spiraling. I thought back to the exact date the email had been sent, 9 days earlier, and something clicked into uncomfortable focus. That Tuesday had been an unusually chaotic day. A client emergency had pulled me away from my desk for nearly 40 minutes during the early afternoon. My laptop left unlocked in the rush, something I knew, even as I remembered it, was a mistake I'd made more than once during high-pressure stretches, trusting the general safety of an office full of people I'd worked alongside for years. I didn't want to think about who else had been near my desk that day, but once the thought surfaced, I couldn't stop turning it over. I called my closest friend outside the company, Elliot, who worked in cybersecurity for an unrelated firm and had, over the years, become the person I called whenever something technical felt over my head. I explained everything: the email, the timing, IT's confirmation that it came from my actual login and device, the 40-minute window where my laptop had sat unlocked and unattended. Elliot's first question cut straight to something I hadn't fully considered. "Does your building track badge access at a granular level, not just who entered the building, but movement between specific areas, like near individual desks?" It did, as it turned out, though it wasn't something most employees thought about often. Our office had upgraded its security system the previous year, partly for insurance purposes, tracking badge swipes not just at the main entrance but at several internal checkpoints throughout the floor, including near the executive area and, notably, near a supply closet situated close to my own desk that required a badge scan to access. I requested the badge access logs for that specific date, framing it to our office manager as needing to review my own movement for an unrelated timesheet discrepancy, uncomfortable with revealing my actual suspicions before I had anything concrete to support them. What came back 2 days later showed something that made my pulse spike the moment I saw it: a badge scan at the supply closet checkpoint near my desk, time-stamped 4 minutes after I'd left for the client emergency, registered under Nathan's credentials. It wasn't definitive proof on its own. Nathan legitimately used that supply closet regularly, and being near my desk wasn't automatically evidence of anything malicious. But combined with the timing, it was enough to make my earlier, uncomfortable suspicion feel considerably less like paranoia and considerably more like something worth investigating properly. I thought back, with new and uncomfortable clarity, to smaller moments over the preceding months I'd never examined closely a comment Nathan had made a few weeks earlier. Half joking about how some people just get lucky with the big accounts. A slight edge underneath it I'd brushed off at the time. A conversation I'd overheard, only partially, between Nathan and another analyst, about the senior strategist's decision, cut short the moment I walked into the break room. The kind of abrupt silence that, in the moment, seemed like nothing, and in hindsight felt like considerably more. I called Elliot back that evening with everything I'd found. He agreed it was worth pursuing further, but cautioned me carefully against accusing Nathan directly without more concrete proof, given how serious and career-damaging an unfounded accusation could be for both of us if I got this wrong. I had, at that point, less than 48 hours left before Friday's deadline. Elliot suggested something I hadn't considered: our office's internal network almost certainly kept device connection logs, separate from the badge access system, tracking which specific devices connected to the shared office Wi-Fi network and when. If Nathan had used my unlocked laptop directly, rather than his own device, there might not be a separate trace there. But if he'd instead used his own device to access something related to the email, perhaps drafting it elsewhere before somehow sending it through my account, there could be a parallel digital trail. I didn't have direct access to that level of network data myself, but I did have a work friendship with someone in our IT department. A systems administrator named Priya, who I'd worked with occasionally on unrelated technical issues and had always found straightforward and fair. I approached her carefully the following morning, explaining honestly that I was trying to clear my name before Friday's deadline and needed help understanding exactly how the unauthorized email had technically been sent. Priya, to her credit, took the situation seriously once she understood the stakes and agreed to pull the more detailed technical logs surrounding the incident, something within her normal scope of responsibility for investigating a security issue of this kind, regardless of who initiated the request. What she found by that afternoon changed everything. The email had, in fact, been composed and sent directly from my laptop, during the exact window I'd been away for the client emergency, but the browser history on my machine showed something I hadn't noticed initially. An activity trace inconsistent with anything I would have done myself, a brief login to an internal template library used for drafting client communications, accessed in a way that matched a saved template style Nathan used regularly for his own client emails. A formatting habit distinct enough from my own that Priya, familiar with both our working styles from routine IT support requests, recognized it immediately. More specifically, the device's local cache showed a saved draft, briefly present before being deleted, containing formatting metadata tied to a document template previously associated with Nathan's own user profile, the kind of technical fingerprint that isn't visible to a casual glance. But that showed up clearly once someone with the right access actually looked, combined with the badge scan placing him near my desk during the exact window in question, and the motive sitting quietly underneath months of subtly shifting behavior. The picture that emerged was no longer circumstantial. It was, as Priya put it carefully, about as close to a smoking gun as internal IT logs are ever going to get you. I sat with that confirmation for a long moment, feeling something complicated settle over the panic that had consumed me for the better part of 2 days. Not relief exactly, not yet, but the specific, steadying clarity of finally understanding completely what had actually happened to me. I had 1 full day left before Friday's board meeting. I spent it building the clearest, most factual presentation of evidence I possibly could, with Priya's help formatting the technical details in a way that would make sense to Denise, without requiring specialized IT knowledge to follow. I requested an early meeting with Denise on Thursday morning, a full day ahead of the original Friday deadline, wanting to resolve this properly before it became a spectacle at a board meeting rather than a controlled, factual conversation. I laid everything out for her in order: the badge access logs showing Nathan near my desk, during the exact window the email was sent. The device cache showing formatting metadata tied to his user profile rather than mine, and Priya's professional assessment, provided in writing, confirming the technical trail pointed conclusively away from any action I had personally taken. Denise listened with the careful, measured attention of someone who understood, immediately, the seriousness of what she was looking at, not just for me, but for the agency's broader security practices, and for Nathan himself, given what this now implied about his conduct. "I need to loop in HR immediately," she said once I'd finished. "This isn't something I can resolve on my own, given what's actually being alleged here. But I want you to know, right now, that based on what you've shown me, I don't believe you were responsible for this." HR moved quickly once formally involved. Given the financial exposure and the clear evidence trail already assembled, Nathan was brought in for a meeting that same afternoon, presented with the same evidence I'd shown Denise, given the opportunity to explain himself before any formal action was taken. I wasn't in that meeting myself, but Denise told me afterward, carefully, what had happened. Nathan's initial denials collapsed quickly once confronted with the specific technical evidence, particularly the template metadata that Priya's report tied directly to his user profile, the kind of detail that's genuinely difficult to explain away with anything other than the truth. He eventually admitted, according to Denise, to accessing my unlocked laptop during the window. I was away for the client emergency, framing it weakly as something that had gotten out of hand, an attempt, he claimed, to simply create some friction that might slow down my momentum ahead of the senior strategist's decision, insisting he hadn't fully thought through how seriously it would actually damage the client relationship or how directly it would implicate me. Whatever his intended justification, the outcome was the same: a documented, deliberate act of sabotage, using unauthorized access to a colleague's device and account, that had caused genuine financial exposure for the agency and had come within a single day of costing me my job entirely. Nathan was terminated that same week, following a short internal investigation that confirmed everything the initial evidence had already made clear. The client relationship. Once I was able to explain the full situation directly with Denise's support, framing it honestly as an internal security incident already resolved was salvageable. If bruised, the client ultimately appreciated the transparency more than they resented the initial confusion, and the account stayed with the agency. The senior strategist role, delayed briefly while the situation resolved, was offered to me 2 weeks later. I won't pretend it didn't feel strange. Receiving a promotion in the same stretch of weeks where I'd nearly lost my job entirely over something I hadn't done, but Denise was clear in the offer conversation that the decision reflected the work I'd been doing all along, not simply the fallout of Nathan's actions. It's been about 4 months now since that Thursday meeting with Denise. The senior strategist role has been everything I hoped it would be professionally, if considerably more cautious now in certain habits I used to take for granted. I lock my laptop every single time I step away from my desk now, without exception. A small, almost embarrassingly basic precaution I wish I'd taken seriously long before I had a reason to. I've heard, through mutual industry contacts, that Nathan found a position at a smaller firm across town, though I don't know the specifics of what, if anything, he disclosed about why he left Corbin Reeves. I don't spend much time thinking about it. I don't feel triumphant about what happened to him. Exactly, mostly. I feel a kind of tired relief that the truth held up when it mattered, and gratitude for the specific, unglamorous combination of badge logs and browser cache metadata that happened to exist in exactly the right place to prove it. The client relationship that nearly fell apart over this has, if anything, grown stronger since. Occasionally, I think, Trust that survives being genuinely tested ends up sturdier than trust that's never been challenged at all. Though I wouldn't recommend the specific method of testing it that I went through to get there. I think sometimes about how close this came to going the other way. How easily, without Elliot's specific expertise, without Priya's willingness to take my concerns seriously and dig into the technical detail properly, without those 72 hours happening to fall in a way that let me build a real case, instead of simply protesting my innocence and hoping to be believed, this could have ended with me quietly, unfairly terminated. My reputation damaged in an industry small enough that word travels fast, while Nathan continued on entirely unbothered. I don't think Nathan set out, years ago when we were hired the same week, to become someone capable of doing something like this. I think ambition curdled slowly into something uglier, one small compromise at a time, until framing a colleague for a costly mistake felt, to him in that moment, like a reasonable solution to a problem rather than the serious, damaging thing it actually was. I don't know if that makes it more understandable or simply more unsettling. Maybe both. What I know for certain is that I've learned to protect myself in ways I never used to think were necessary, and that the version of trust I extend at work now comes with considerably more attention to the small, unglamorous details that, it turns out, can end up mattering more than anyone expects them to. If you made it through this whole story with me, thank you. I know the clock is ticking part of this one, probably had your heart racing a little, and I appreciate you sticking around to see how it played out. This channel is built on stories exactly like this one: real workplace betrayal, real stakes, real karma, and I post a brand new one every single day. So if this one had you hooked, do me a favor and hit subscribe right now so you don't miss what's coming tomorrow. Drop a comment and let me know, did you see Nathan coming? Or did the badge logs catch you off guard too? I read every single one. Hit subscribe, tap the bell so you catch tomorrow's story the second it drops, and I'll see you in the next one.